Good day to one and all. I'm extremely glad and I'm brimming with a lot of enthusiasm and gratitude as I stand in front of you. Such an august audience, and probably in the field of construction, I'll be the least qualified person amongst all of you. But probably that is what helps us grow. To listen to concepts that are so varied and so different from what we have seen and what we have read and what we have studied and what we have experienced. Being open to that is the key to growth in my eyes. And the very fact that you have even put that thought into this venue, which I think is one of the most open indoor space, though it might sound an oxymoron. It stokes you to really think high. And that amount of attention to detail definitely reveals your openness to growth. Perhaps, as Sri DivyaSIyer just put it across to us now, the name construction philosophy might puzzle you in the beginning, but I think when you start being a part of it, even if it's a transient association, you soon begin to realize the worth of the name. I had the opportunity to go through a couple of your magazine volumes, and it did encourage me to read till the last page. So congratulations to each one of you who have been working behind this, and I hope that this venture continues to inspire a lot more people in the construction field, in the infrastructure development field in the days to come. For our concepts about construction are often etched in stone, pun intended. We always think about construction with regard to materials, with regard to equipments, with regard to contrivances, with regard to stone and concrete and rock and a lot of hard things out there. But construction is much beyond all of that. Let me begin the second annual CP lecture with a small experience from my own life, which is very personal to me. So this is the summer vacation, as we all know. I have a little son who is all of 5 right now. And so the inevitable question that every friend of mine asks me is, where are you going for the summer vacation? The much awaited summer vacation tour that every child looks forward to. As a child, I also did look forward to for these wonderful outings with my family. So I ask my son this question every single day. Shall we go out for a tour? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go to the beach? Do you want to go to some fancy hotel? Do you want to go to a village? Do you want to go to a temple? Where do you want to go? So his answer is, yes, we can go to all these places, but we have to come back here at night. Now that is a very strict mandate to keep when you're planning tours, right? So our house is named Abhayam, and he says, at night we have to come back to Abam. He calls it Abam. Okay? So we keep trying to stoke him and entice him with all kinds of attractions, trying to lure him to everything possible. And he insists that he wants to come back to Abam to sleep. And I keep thinking, what is it that draws him back to that, very small house, I would say. It was built probably 20 years ago, so you can imagine. And his space inside that house is even much more limited, But he's completely in love with that space. And the sense of security and the sense of safety that little room gives him cannot be replaced by the finest and the most opulent of structures in this world. And that is not applicable only for a child. It's applicable to each one of us, in fact. We keep fighting this innate instinct within us, wherein we connect with spaces emotionally, and we keep crossing the seas as we grow. There is also one more reason, other than sheer emotional connectedness or the safety and security of a child in his or her own space in that little story. That is the fact that, so when as you know, I relocated to Trivandrum after a 2.5-year stint of my district magistracy in Pathanamthitta. So when I got back here, we thought we should do up something for my little son. So we, cleared out some space in the house, and we said, now this is going to be your playroom. So as we were clearing up the space, we thought, we would get some interiors done and make it look a little fancy and a nursery-like and all of that. We'd gotten an interior designer team at home. So, they came and saw the space, very limited space with its own constraints, but we said we could do something with it, definitely. So we had really brilliant ideas and drawings. But when it came to the estimates, I realized that it was far out there, much beyond my reach. So we dropped the idea at the level of the estimate. And after that, I said, now what should I do? I have promised my son that I'll do something for him to make his room up. And here I was standing there helpless. And then I said, why don't we do up the room ourselves? Okay? And you won't believe, inside that room, every single speck of dust is actually contributed by my little son. Every single thing has been chosen by him. Right from the bed, to the fan, to the light, to the little study table, to the little tent, to the little bed sheet, to all the hundreds of festoonings that he has actually wrapped the room around with. Every little color has been chosen by him. And I show him, on my phone in Amazon. These are all very, very, very petty things mostly, nothing which would pinch my pocket. But, when we go out to a temple, we would see a little wall hanging of a nettipatam, of the ornamental flowers or the garlands out there. And he would just fall in love with it. And he would say, I want to put this at this point in my room. It might be the most awkward point as far as we are concerned. But in his eyes, he would want that nettipatam in that particular point. It might not fit the design mandates of anybody on this earth but him. In fact, he said, I want the wallpaper sticker of some wild animals to give him company. So I bought the wallpaper sticker, and I was about to peel it off from the sticker and put it on the wall. I had found a nice little space. It was a vertical sticker, actually, So it was meant to be on the side of the door, wherein the animals would look as if they are peeping into your room. So he took that and he said, I want to stick it on the wall. I said, okay. When a 4-year-old child says, I didn't want to say no to it. I said, okay. And he said, no, I don't want to stick it here. I said, but this is the ideal space for it. He said, no, I don't want to stick it here. I said, okay, where do you want to stick it? He found a panel on the closet of the room, on the mirror, which was the exact size of this vertical sticker. And I, as wild as we would find it, to go and put a sticker on top of a mirror, which, completely demolishes the purpose of the mirror. But he wanted to put it there. I said, okay, go ahead and put it there. So the mirror in his room actually has the wild animals on it. But at the bottom of the mirror, there is a little space which he has made for himself, wherein he can see just himself. I cannot see myself in that mirror, but he can see himself in that mirror. And just above his head are all these wild animals on the mirror. Such a thought would have never come to my head, And if I had not allowed him to do that, I would miss the joy of seeing him looking at the mirror with the wild animals accompanying him day in and day out and enjoying himself out there, I just wanted to narrate this experience because this is something that I soak in day in and day out. And as I mentioned, the kind of heart tugs that he has to that room is not only because of the safety and security, but also because of the fact that he has built his own empire there. With complete commitment and giving wings to his creativity there. And all that we did as parents, as a family, was just to give him the liberty to do that. Not really sticking to our norms and standards and mandates of design or of space utilization for that matter. So as atrocious or ridiculous that room may look in probably an outsider's eyes, it is arguably the most beautiful space for me. And this is something that I learned about designing and about spaces and construction when we go ahead with constructing huge spaces and infrastructure in the rest of the world. At the end of the day, what are we constructing these spaces for? We want people to connect. We want people to connect with their inner selves. We want people to connect with the goodness that the world has to offer. We want people to connect with each other. These spaces become living entities only when we stoke people to do that. When spaces evoke emotions in human beings, that is when it really comes to life. And so today, I want to place a gentle reminder and request in front of you that construction is not all about the hard materials out there, but it is more about the softer aspects of life and living that it supports. I would say the best construction is the one which evokes the finest emotions in human beings. If you look at the world's most renowned sculptures and artists and construction pioneers for that matter, we would all acknowledge that standing in front of a statue in a museum is not only about appreciating the art or the hard work or the quality of the material that has gone into it, but it is about the emotion that it would evoke. It's like being a chef who works with the finest of ingredients and still is unable to evoke the finest taste sensations in your mouth. You might have the best of equipments, you might have the best of machinery, you might have the best of substrates, and yet, if you are unable to evoke the right kind of emotions in people in a structure for what it is meant for, I would think that as a builder, one fails. But even with the most basic and fundamental of technologies and material and substrate, if you are able to invoke the right kind of emotions in people, I would again give a big salute to you. And this is something that we are lacking in today's age and era also. When I talk about sculptures, probably one of the finest and the most applauded sculptures in the history of human art and sculpture is that of David, right, by Michelangelo, which was carved out of a single marble stone in the 16th century. It took around 3 to 4 years for him to actually carve out that single statue of David. And David has been studied and observed and researched by innumerable number of students and art enthusiasts from all across the world. For the very fine anatomical details that the sculpture carries, for the spirit of determination that his face carries, and probably the philosophy that the process carried. It is said that Michelangelo himself, in an interview given much later after he installed the sculpture, that when he actually was assigned the work of carving out David out of that huge block of marble, it was seen to be an uphill task which was given up by a lot of other sculptors who were much renowned and much more experienced than Michelangelo at that point of time. He was probably just 26, 27 at that age when he commenced on the work. And he says, when I saw that huge block of marble, I could see David inside that. All that I did was to chip away the extra pieces which was not necessary. He did not carve David out of that, but he says, I just chipped off the extra pieces which was not necessary. And David manifested himself, and David revealed himself. As a philosophy, as an artist, I find it so endearing, to even think like that. And if only we could actually do it in our own work, in our own vocations, day after day, we would be revealing the finest of work which would be worth 1,000,000 years and 1,000,000 views, not only on social media, but even otherwise. Just negate the unnecessary bits and pieces around the fine creation that you have envisioned. It is not only about negating the unnecessary bits and pieces, but it also instills that sense of humility that each of us owe to ourselves in this industry. As creators, we are civil servants at the end of the day. So day in and day out, the very name of our profession keeps reminding us that we are nobody but servants, right? And to me, that name itself is a constant reminder of what I am and what I ought to be to the rest of the world. On the same plane, when we become artists, when we become creators, when we become builders, there is that sense of us being the provider and the creator that creeps into us just by virtue of our profession. And this thought that we are merely facilitating the manifestation of the finest spirit and soul inside each material actually does more to humble ourselves than anything else. He didn't say that I created David. I just helped David reveal himself or manifest himself. And to me, that very thought of humility is something that would help us keep on creating better creations day in and day out. And there is also one more lesson that I keep learning from them, which is that it is not only the final product that actually matters. When we talk about construction culture, when I asked them what should I be talking about, I was told construction culture and ethics and philosophy. So when we talk about construction culture, often we focus ourselves on the finished product. We value, we admire the finished product a lot. Our assessment, our judgment, our evaluation, everything comes off the finished product. But construction culture does not start there. Construction culture does not start from the point of the finished product. Construction culture starts from the point it is seeded in your head. From the point of conception starts the construction culture. And I wish we focused a lot more on the process than on the product. There is a Zen story which I'm very fond of, not particularly in the context of construction or infrastructure, but generally in my life as such. So there was this disciple who went to the Zen master and told him that, I am one of the most meritorious persons around in this village, and I would like to be your disciple, and I would like to learn these particular skills and acquire this knowledge from you. How long would you think that it would take for me to acquire this knowledge and attain this level of skill? And the teacher, the master, says, well, it might take 5 years for you in my school. And this person was a little let down by that, and he said, no, I'm not one of your regular run-of-the-mill students. I'm already accomplished and I'm already meritorious, so my starting point would be different. So it might not take that longer, but I really want to achieve these objectives. How long do you think it'll take? And the master says, well, if you're that keen, it might take 10 years. And he gets really flustered at that and says, no, you really don't know who I am, and what I have done in my life and what I have achieved. And for you to say that it'll take me 10 years of being your disciple, that's a long spell. Why don't you think again and tell me? And the master says, well, 15 years then. And he gets really frustrated and storms out of the room and walks back into the room after a while. And once he's calmed down, the master explains to him, once you have started this journey, if you have both your eyes fixated at that long distance goal, you do not pay attention to the path that you're treading, and so it'll take you longer and longer and longer to achieve that goal. But if you focus on the path, on the process, and walk the path yourself, you will learn to observe the opportunities and the obstacles which may arise on the path, and you will start easily adapting, and you will keep learning through the process, and you will reach the goal much faster. Your fixation of both the eyes and your mind on that goal is going to be more disastrous than useful for you when you take up this long journey of learning. And this is something which I have carried with myself all through my life ever since I read this. And in the construction field, I think we need to focus more on the process than on the product. If we really need to develop a construction culture which is worth emulating. Right from the point zero, where the need for the construction arises, it is not even the design point, it is the need point, perhaps. When we talk about life mission, which I would say is a brilliant example of construction culture from the government of Kerala side, wherein we enable people to live with dignity. And human dignity is given utmost importance there. Right from the point where the need arises for construction, the construction culture starts weaving itself from the need to identification of the location, to the property, to the design, to the materials, to the construction process, until it is a finished product, and even further as to how we can keep improvising it. It is a continual process, the construction culture, and it involves not just inanimate objects. It involves human beings. It involves dreams. It involves fantasies. It involves lives. All of this spun together is the construction culture. I have Dr. Jayakumar here with me, who is my WHISTLE CEO. I can't see him. Where is he? Okay. So, he was probably the architect of the Vizhinjam Port right from the point zero. From the time it was conceived, he has been associated with the project. And I was told that he even gave a lecture to you yesterday. But now, when we are at the verge of actually presenting it out to the world, he stepped back. I found it extremely humbling an experience to actually bid him farewell in my organization. Because it was beyond my dream that somebody who has worked so hard for this project right from the point zero would not want to be showcased when the finished product is out there. And to me, that was a revelation as to how much he loved the process than the product in itself. And to me, that is a shining example of a construction culture that allows itself to grow further. Once you get content with the finished product, once you start beaming with pride, probably you're stopping your growth right there. But when you know just when to step back, the process is still on. You don't have the finished product in your hand. The process is still on. Your growth is still on. The learning curve is still going up and up and up and up. And you become unstoppable. It's often the recognition of huge successes that actually sort of, detonates our growth, I would say, if I may use that word, And if you focus more on the process, I'm certain that it won't happen, And when I say process, I would also request each one of you in your own ways and means to pay more attention and to build your construction culture in a much more humane manner by treating the construction workers well. Kerala as we are today, owe a lot to our guest workers. And we are responsible for their welfare. And as builders, as pioneers in the construction field, it pains me to say that every time I have visited a colony or a settlement, I wouldn't even know what is the right name to call. A conglomeration, no. Yeah. I'm running out of words, in fact, because some of these places, some of these settlements where our construction workers are put up, their living conditions are still pathetic. And we, as pioneers in the construction field, we as responsible human beings for having brought them, for having lured them from their own comfortable spaces into our state, we ought to give them the dignity of human life that we all wish for. And as I mentioned, this is all interwoven within our construction culture as well. When we start respecting and treating human beings who are involved in the process of construction with respect, it definitely shines through in our construction culture and in our finished product as well. Trust me, it would go a long way when we start paying heed to their needs as well. That is one area where we are actually grappling with a lot of issues even today. I also happen to be the project director of Kerala Solid Waste Management Project, apart from being the MD of Vizhinjam International Seaport. And when we talk about solid waste management in urban centers especially, one of the stumbling block that we face day in and day out is actually this sector. How do we handle, how do we tackle the waste management in areas where our guest workers are actually lodged? In many areas, they don't even have adequate sanitation facilities, leave alone waste management. It is not only a matter of laws and rules and enforcement that would pick us out of this shoddy trend. It requires a lot of humaneness from each one of us to actually ensure that we elevate the quality of lives of every single person who is involved in the construction industry. And that would go a long way in not just offering the world better products, but also attracting the best of talents to our state. The more we attend to people, the more we benefit as an institution. That is not a new thing to any of us. I'm sure that all of us know that. But it's just that we require constant reminders day in and day out. I remember the first time when I visited Technopark years ago, when Dr. Vijay was there. I found these sprawling buildings with shiny, at that time vitrified tiles was a big thing. So, shiny, huge floor tiles, and everything was so spick and span. There was not a speck of dust that I could find on the floor. And that was what captivated me the most, rather than the height of the buildings. So, I was talking to Dr. Vijay and I asked him, why would you, there is so much empty space out here, there's so much open space out here, Why would you need so much space, which is actually not of much utility? I could think only at that level, at that point, because I was so used to working in and living in small spaces and making every corner of the room functional. And he told me, it enables people to connect with each other in an unabashed manner. And I said, but how do you manage to keep it so clean? When we have our offices, it is so difficult for us to keep it clean, especially when you have, people walking in, walking out. It is not the same set of people who are attending to it every day. You still have a floating population here and you still manage to keep it so clean. How is that? This is probably like 20 years ago or 15, 20 years ago that I'm talking about. And he told me, you have to start off in the cleanest manner possible. And that is how you would actually maintain it clean. And that really stuck with me, Why would you want to spend so much on cleanliness on day one? Why would you want to provide clean floors? Why would you want to provide neat tables, tidy spaces, open spaces? That's because there is that innate, intrinsic feedback loop that gets into human beings, that you would not want to go and be the first person to spit on a clean wall, right? But if it is already unclean, you don't mind doing that again. But you wouldn't want the first person to litter the cleanest of the floors. And we are always guilty about that. So it's just tapping into that emotion. It is just tapping into that little psychological trick inside human beings that you provide them the cleanest of stuff. And the chances are that they're going to keep it clean for a much longer time. But to begin with, if you're not going to be worried about it, it's not going to stay that way. Very often when I go and see, say, houses, like whether it be life mission, whether it be friends and families or relatives or whoever it is, whenever I go to a housewarming, I always look at these little nooks and corners of the houses. Sometimes if they have done a rather, unfinished job of painting, there would be little trickle-down drops of paint in some corners. It might have taken just, 2 more minutes of that person to just wipe it off from the floor lining tiles, but he wouldn't have taken the effort to do that because it's a small house. It's okay, It can live without that sense of perfection. And trust me, any house that starts off with that is definitely going to be a mess. And that's why I keep saying construction culture begins from the process. And every little thing actually counts at the end of the day. And in today's modern world, in this fast changing society, not even society, I would say, even if we look at evolution as a whole, all the other creatures that we know of probably have stuck to very similar hoarding spaces, or say the lion lives in a similar den, for thousands and 10,000s and millions of years. The bird makes a very similar nest. But we as human beings have evolved so much, and let me tell you, one of the most important markers of this evolution comes from you, the builders and the construction pioneers. That is the most visible change in all of human life and evolution. We have developed a lot in all other fields, I agree. But still, birth and death continues, and whatever happens in between, we keep grappling with various issues in every other field of science and technology. But in construction field, we have grown beyond the dream level. So much so that sometimes it scares me if we are overspeeding. You know, the substrate for our growth, the road for our growth remains the same, which is our ecosystem, which is the earth, which is our home, wherein every other creature actually have stuck to their guns, and we have grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, and we are still growing. But let's remind ourselves that speed thrills but kills. So let's not overspeed. That's my only word of caution that I would want to give you today. Let's move at a pace where we are in alignment with our Mother Earth, with every living creature around us. You know, the Sthapatya Veda, the Veda of architecture, you know, when you look into the core of it, it talks about how an establishment, in the sense, you know, a construction, how an architecture should actually serve the ultimate goal of connecting everything with everything else. It is a sense of connectedness that is actually going to make your structures last for beyond generations. It is not the stability of the structure. It is a sense of connectedness that you're going to give to the people in it and around it that is going to actually give it that everlasting mode. I would just wrap up with one more small experience that I've had in this context, which is in today's fast-moving world, in this fast-paced growth that we are all facing, as much as we love it, it comes with its own price tag as well. Whether it be technology, whether it be materials, whether it be the process or the product for that matter. And it's important that we pay heed to the concerns of people and not just the aspirations of people while we build a space. We often ask, what do they want? And people have huge aspirations for models of constructions, especially in Kerala, where, you know, the ultimate goal of anybody is probably to make a big mansion and leave, you know. So for a community like this, it's also important for you as pioneers in the construction field to ask people, what are their concerns? What are they scared of when they're building a house? You know, that's a question we don't ask. We ask them, what do you want? You know, what all facilities do you want? But address their fears when you build a space for them. I learned this from one of my staff members in Trivandrum Collectorate. So, you know, they had invited me for their housewarming. She was an attender in my office. So I'd gone there, and very joyously she was showing me around the rooms in her house. Somewhere far away from the city it was. And as you enter the house, the second room on the right side, I still remember, was a nice little space, a cozy space, where her child, who was 7 years old at that point of time, 7 or 8 years old, she was in class 3, I think. So she came jumping up and down to me and, you know, tugging at my sari and saying, "Auntie, this is my room here. I am so happy about this." And so I said, "Wow, wonderful, it's a beautiful room." And when I turned back and looked, there was no door to that room. It was an open room, okay? And so I asked my friend, my colleague, I said, "Why is there that this room doesn't have a door? All the other rooms in the house have a door." So she said, "That's my child's room." I said, "So what? your child's room doesn't require a door. It sounded very absurd to me at that point. And she said, ma'am, കുട്ടികളൊക്കെ ഇപ്പോൾ കമ്പ്യൂട്ടറും ഒക്കെ പിടിച്ചിരുന്ന് എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് ചെയ്യുന്നതെന്നൊന്നും നമുക്ക് ആർക്കും ഒന്നും അറിയത്തില്ല. ഒരു കഥ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അതങ്ങ് അടച്ചു വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അവരേത് ലോകത്താണ് കയറുന്നതെന്ന് നമുക്കറിയത്തില്ല. എനിക്ക് പേടിയാണ് കുട്ടികളെ അങ്ങനെ വിടാനായിട്ട്. എൻ്റെ ഒരേ ഒരു മോളാണ്, എനിക്കങ്ങനെ വിടാനായിട്ട് പേടിയാണ്. കഥ ഇല്ലയെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ഈ കുട്ടിക്കാലം മുതൽ തന്നെ അവൾ അതിനങ്ങ് ശീലിക്കും. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞാൻ കഥക് വെച്ചില്ല ആ മുറിക്ക് മാത്രം എന്ന്. ആൻഡ് I was completely taken aback. I was not a mother as yet at that point of time. But I completely understand and, relate with her concerns now, As I mentioned, we hear about all kinds of absurd things happening all around us, and how much technology and media actually influences the little minds around us, and how it shapes their destiny even. And as a mother, that was the architectural solution that she found to address her concern, I'm not getting into whether it's right or wrong, but that's just an experience put out there for each one of you to think about the fears and the concerns and the possible solutions that you can give to people who are going to inhabit your spaces. And let's hope and pray that together we build a world with more windows than doors, wherein we can connect with each other in a much freer and fairer fashion. So thank you so much once again for this brilliant opportunity. It's been a pleasure having you as my audience, and warm regards and love to each one of you as you keep building lives ahead. Thanks.